Well, good morning, and you are very welcome to Connemara Community Radio. Broadcasting on 106.1 and 87.8 FM, and you can also hear us streaming live on connemara.fm.com. So, not just the start of a new week, start of a new month. And I'm reminded this morning, because it's such a beautiful morning, that when March comes in like a lamb, it goes out like a lion. So, slightly worrying for the end of the month, but let's hope that that's not true. Got a very interesting program lined up for you. Some interesting interviews, and of course we'll have Katrina as usual with the mindfulness section. So I'm going to start off with a problem which I must admit I hadn't heard the phrase before, so it's going to be very interesting to find out more about it. It's about parental alienation, and I'm delighted to have on the line Kenn Joyce, who's the director of Alienated Children First. So first of all, Ken, you're very, very welcome to Connemara Community Radio.
Very nice to be here, Marion. How are you?
I'm good, and as I say, beautiful morning here in Connemara. You're in Galway, are you?
I'm not.
You're not
on the East Coast today, but
all right.
I'm glad to say the weather over here is equally clement.
Good, that's lovely to hear. Right, well, as I said there at the beginning, I hadn't, until I read this press release, I had not come across the phrase parental alienation. So maybe to start with, I'm sure there's a lot of my listeners must be in the same boat. So maybe you just explain to us what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's basically a situation where it usually happens when a couple separates, Marion, and one party decides that they don't want the children to see the other party. So it is described loosely as a situation where a child, for no good reason, does not want to see one of its parents, and it is the result of coercive control by the other parent.
Okay. Now, I mean, I presume you'd agree there are cases where a child doesn't want to see one of the parents, and it's got nothing to do with coercive control by the other parent.
And that's not what we're about.
So yeah, you're only really looking at the ones where there is.
Look, unfortunately, there are too many cases where kids, their father doesn't treat them properly, or their mother doesn't treat them properly, and they genuinely are in fear, or they're uncomfortable with, or for whatever reason they don't want to see that parent, and that of course is not the result of coercive control, and is not the result of the child being manipulated, which is what we're about. We're talking about specific cases where the child loves both parents, as all children should, but is prevented from expressing its desire to see one of its parents because the other parent makes them feel bad if they do.
Okay, and what if the other parent, the parent who has the child, we'll say, is keeping them away from the other one because she might know things about the ex-partner, which makes her very wary of them being near the children?
Well, that's what the courts are for.
Right. Okay.
The parent does not have an arbitrary right to decide, well, I know something about my ex-wife or my ex-husband, and I don't think it's in my children's interest to see them, and I'm making a decision, therefore, that the child will not see them, and I'm going to prevent it happening. That's not allowed.
Okay. So does the other parent then have to go to court and sort of claim their rights? Is that the way it works?
In extreme cases, yes, that's what happens. But usually the kind of situation that we deal with is one where a father or a mother will decide, well, I'm really angry at my ex and I'm going to hurt them by making sure they don't see the children. And in the process of doing that, of course, what inevitably happens is the children caught in the middle are the victims. And it is those children that we are focused on trying to protect.
Okay, so and in what sort of form is your action taking, or action may be the wrong word, but
no, action is a good word.
It's a good word. Okay.
We've a couple of different prongs to our bow at this particular juncture. We have a campaign whereby, firstly, we've asked, as you correctly pointed out, Marion, not everyone has actually heard the term parental alienation, and not everybody knows what it is. So the first thing we decided needed to happen was we needed to have an official definition. What is it? So we've been working with the Minister for Justice, and she has come up with a definition for parental alienation now, which she has put forward in the Dáil, and we are relying on that for the moment. But more importantly, we have canvassed all of the county councils in Ireland, and we have explained what parental alienation is to them, and we have asked them, would they please lobby the government on our behalf for recognition in law of parental alienation. Currently, parental alienation in other countries around the world is a criminal offence that comes with a 10-year jail sentence, and rightly so, because children's lives are absolutely destroyed by the parents that do this to their kids. And when I say destroyed, like we are talking about a typical scenario will be where, come the age of about 17, when the child realizes what's actually happened to their childhood, it starts, the psychologists tell us, and we know from our own personal examples, it starts with self-harm, and then it leads to immature sexual relations, to drug and alcohol abuse, and in many cases, unfortunately, it leads to suicide. And that's not exclusive to the children. We have, unfortunately, a number of parents on our books have ended up committing suicide because, it's an intrinsic part of being a human being that you want to bring up your children. And if you are refused access to your children for no good reason, other than somebody dislikes you, it eats you inside. And when you see a system where people don't understand what's going on, and the courts appear to be facilitating the abuser, it's very difficult to deal with, and unfortunately members do commit suicide. Our recent survey attributes as much as 10% of all suicides in Ireland are either directly or indirectly related to parental alienation. And the psychologists have most recently told us that the effects on a child of parental alienation are identical to the effects of having been physically, sexually abused by a parent. So
really, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's very, very serious, and it's one that's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. So we're very lucky, though, that our campaign for support from the councils has, as of last week, would you believe, resulted in 30 of the 31 councils in Ireland have all signed up and said, yes, we think this should be stopped, and we will lobby the government for it. Galway City was the last one, actually.
That doesn't sound good for Galway. But that's that aside. So what sort of form would the legislation take if it were brought in?
That's a decision for my betters, I have to say. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to understand legislation and how it might work. But ostensibly, it would require, I suppose, number one, that there is a definition of parental alienation to which everyone can subscribe and refer. And the Minister has been obliging already, in as much as she has described it in the Dáil for us, in her own words, to the best of her ability. The second thing then would be that the judiciary are actually educated as to what parental alienation is and how insidious it is and the effects that it has on our children, because a lot of judges are, they're all extremely busy people, especially now with COVID and everything, and they oftentimes will just perceive, there's a couple of bickering parents here, and they're saying nasty things to the kid about each other, and that's the level of seriousness to which they will attach a case of parental alienation when it's presented to them. But in fact, it's an awful lot more serious than that, and they don't know that it's more serious because they're not trained. Like you, they probably hardly heard the term before, and certainly have no professional qualifications in how to deal with it. So those two things would be the first steps. Number one, that it has a definition, and number two, that the judiciary is educated. The third step then would be what Alan Chatter tried to bring in 2015, which is some kind of punitive measure in law. Currently, if you receive a court order saying that your ex-wife is to see the children for every second week, and you're to see them every week, and you don't obey that, what typically happens is nothing. You will be brought into court after 6 months of waiting and told, that's a terrible thing to do, Mr. Blogg, don't do that to your wife again. And if you do it again, she'll have to wait another 6 months to get you into court, and then the judge will say the same thing to you again. And of course, it's the same the other way around.
So there's no penalty for disobeying the instruction you've been given?
There is, in theory, the penalty of being in contempt of court, but as one judge said to me, and is exemplified in Bob Geldof's excellent movie on the subject, I can't remember the name of Bob's program now. I think it's called, oh gosh, I'll have to, it's going to me in a second, but
don't worry.
Basically what the judges typically say is, we, what do you want me to do? I can't put the mother of the child in jail, can I? Is that what you would like? Would you like me to put the mother of the child in jail? And Bob Geldof says unreservedly, he says, yes, I would, because if you have a situation where mothers and fathers out there think that they can just completely flaunt court orders for their children to have access to the other parent, and there will be no consequences, the word gets out and everybody's at it. Whereas if one parent gets sent to Mountjoy for a cup of tea for an hour one day and has to tell all the neighbours that she has to go or he has to go, the next thing is you're going to have, oops, hang on a second here, I don't want that happening to me. So there's a strong argument, and I don't pretend to have the answers. As I said at the outset, this is a system that my betters will have to sort out. But that's an example of the kind of dilemmas that
it's a tricky one, because then again, I mean, you might say, well, maybe fining is the answer, but then it's very possibly the children who will suffer if one or other of the parents has to cough up a large sum of money.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one.
What Alan Chatter did succeed in bringing in to legislation in 2015 was a law whereby if one parent does withhold access incorrectly from the other parent, then they have to give some of their own access time in lieu, and that is already enshrined in
it. Okay, so there is a start here being made.
Yeah, but unfortunately, again, it's enshrined in law, but in practice, it's just not what happens yet, and that's another problem that this whole thing faces. Is there needs to be a cultural shift, Mary, and people need to actually start to think about the children here. The children are the ones that come first here. This is not about bickering parents. This is about, lifelong and multi-generational harm, emotional and psychological harm that is occurring to children, and it needs to be stopped.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave it there, Ken, but thank you very much for talking about it. And also, I do see you have a website that if there are people who would like to find out a bit more, I presume could go to...
By all means, please,
Yeah.
yes, we've 3,600 members, parents at the moment, and it's alienated.ie.
Okay, so that's easy enough to remember. www.alienated.ie. There's all the information that they might need there, and they can presumably contact the organisation through that if they wish to.
Happy to help in any way we can.
Ken, thank you very, very much for coming on and telling us about it.
So
Thank
much
you.
for your time.